Hey guys, Nicolette here with Insomnicat Media. Today we are talking to Doug Kessler. He is the creative director and co-founder of Velocity Partners, and we're going to talk about origin stories. We're going to talk about the meaning of B2B marketing and a lot more. So listen in. Hi guys, I'm Nicolette here with Insomnicat, and today Brian and I are with Doug Kessler. He is one of the founding members and creative director at Velocity Partners. Hi Doug, how are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing well. Doug, for those who don't know who you are, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in marketing and what you do now?
Okay, sure. So Velocity, the agency that I founded or co-founded and work in, is a B2B tech marketing agency. We're about 60 people in London, New York, all B2B, all tech. Clients like Salesforce and Amazon Web Services and Slack and Sprint and things like that. Of course, those are S's, aren't they? We specialize in S. Technology companies starting with the letter S. It's a niche. We're really good at it. And I'm a copywriter by trade, so I consider myself a writer first, I guess. Started my career at Ogilvy Mather in New York, which was in the 80s at Madison Avenue. It was real Mad Men era type thing, end of the Mad Men era. And so I started as an account manager, and then kind of learned that the fun was in the other side of the business, so migrated over. I remember day one, B2B, it was a B2B account at Ogilvy, but I was wearing a Brooks Brothers suit my dad bought me.
Was it like the seersucker one with the, the blue pinstripes? Do you remember that?
No, it was a bit tweedy actually, but yeah, it was a kind of cool thing for my dad to do. This like, hey, first job on Madison Avenue, let's go get you a Brooks Brothers suit.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Doug, we were skimming through actually one of your presentations you created a while back. It was the slideshow, the search for meaning in B2B marketing. And for Brian and I, this is a pretty big thing because we even have a product called Meaning Making. This is what we do. We like to make meaning out of things. So we really that struck a chord with us. And so on this search, and it's a not a lengthy presentation, it's a fun presentation, but you're on the search for the meaning, right? So can you share with the users kind of what you found was the real meaning in B2B marketing? Because I don't know many people that wake up and say, I really want to be a B2B marketer when I grow up. My son is not saying that at 5. So.
Exactly, and neither did I, and nobody does. And it was weird because it came out of this feeling that I knew I loved what I did. That wasn't in doubt, so that was good. But I also knew I couldn't figure out why I loved it. I knew it wasn't glamorous. I had friends working in, and I had done some consumer marketing, at least, having shoots with Beyonce on the beach in Ibiza or something. And it wasn't glamorous. And I was at some kind of supply chain conference in Scunthorpe or something like that. And then I knew it wasn't particularly altruistic. I've got friends doing amazing things in some public sector or private, nonprofit sector stuff, helping, with kids and communities and healthcare. And that's meaningful, right? You don't have to ask what the meaning is of that. So I just kept thinking, why do I love it so much if it clearly isn't either of those things? And I actually tried to write it down for myself. It wasn't supposed to be a content piece for Velocity. And I wrote it, and I liked the answer. It was a list of, I think, 7 things, but I didn't publish it for a year. It was like, I just thought it was too personal, and who cares? And, it just didn't seem the right thing to do. And then I started to see some other brands opening the kimono and sharing their feelings about this kind of thing. I thought, you know what, why not? And press publish, and it just really took off. I mean, it got millions of views and a lot of great response from people who are struggling with the same thing. Like most of us are in kind of boring jobs, boring sounding jobs. I don't think it's boring for a minute, that nobody would think of as a kid, right? And you have to answer this for yourself. What is the meaning? And the kind of things I came up with were just like, look, I like helping good companies grow, companies that I admire. I like helping them grow. I think a company is a cool challenge to set out on. And I think, it's worthy of putting yourself into. And I like seeing how companies work. That was another one, like figuring out how a business or an economy or a market works. So there are things like that, working alongside people that I respect and like and have talent and give themselves to their work. Those things are, what it wasn't was one big answer. It was 7 kind of small answers that added up to just plenty for me. It was like, you know what, that's meaningful, that works.
That's enough, right? That's the why, right? And we were talking a little bit about that with an author yesterday about the origin story, and that's kind of like your personal origin story.
Yeah, and it is the, what is it? And what was cool about it, and I think why I urge people to do this exercise, is it guides your choices in your everyday life. Like if one of my sources of meaning is, helping clients grow, well, I have to pick clients that I really want to see grow. Like I like company, I believe that they're adding value to the world, I believe in their products. And if I don't, well, I'm not going to enjoy that work,
Right.
And one of the certain sources of meaning was helping individual clients in their career succeed and get ahead and do well. And that dictates, well, you better pick clients you like, work with people you'll like, because you don't want to help assholes succeed. And so, it's funny how it was a fundamental search, but it ended up being this helping guide daily choices that actually keep you close to your meaning and help stay away of that burnout that happens when you betray those choices and you find yourself like, why am I doing this for that company I hate, for these people who treat me like shit? If you can avoid those things, you keep that meaning longer. And I've managed to love my work my entire career. It's been a long time and I still really love it. And so I think it comes down to that, being true to one's own sources of meaning.
Yeah, and it's so crazy how the difference it makes when you're actually working with companies and people you enjoy working with, how it just changes the attitude, right, towards what you're doing and what you're putting into it,
Like night and day, and I mean, we all sometimes get out of sync with a colleague or a client, and they're not assholes, but we're just not quite in sync. And that can really erode your sense of being good at what you do and enjoying what you do. And as soon as you can get back into it and realize when you get in sync with a client or a colleague and you're just flying and you realize that's what it's all about. It's really fun.
Yeah, and so many times that's what creates the inspiration, right? That coming together and working together and really creating inspiration to create something bigger, especially when you look for, when you're a company and you're looking for meaning and your purpose as a company and what you're doing in your origin story and how that evolves over time.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know, it just feels like such a different exercise when you're with like-minded people heading on this road together, and your definition of what good marketing is very similar. And that's just a whole different exercise than this kind of pulling teeth with people who don't see things like you do.
Yeah,
I agree. And we're talking about this origin story, and I'll bring it, I mentioned it again. We were talking to someone yesterday about selling, emotional selling, and kind of how storytelling is really important in that, and it kind of all connected to the personal and brand origin story. And recently, Doug, you posted something on LinkedIn about the emotional core of your brand, and this is really trending right now. I mean, that's kind of why it keeps coming up on all of these talks. So what is it why is that origin story, and how is that the core of your personal brand, and your company? What is that story like?
Yeah, and the thing I think you're right. I think it is a trending thing because I think we've all kind of gone off to learn the new techniques. There's so much new stuff to learn in B2B marketing. And a lot of it's on the techie side and the operations side and MarTech and all that. And so we've put a lot of attention to it and taken our eye off of this core thing that hasn't really changed, that stories move people and that that's what we're here to do. And I do think there's a coming back to, wait a sec, what are we here for? And especially because when you get these things right, the performance on all that operation stuff works so much better. Everything resonates so much better. And so we've started to evangelize in what we call a galvanizing story for a company or a brand, saying, all right, you got to be able to answer things in a certain structured way. What is the change in the world that has made you necessary, kind of thing. Well, what's changed, and what is the new opportunity, and what are the threats that happen because of that change, and what are the breakthroughs that release the potential there, and that kind of structured story. And we believe in this, and we know that a lot of our best work at Velocity is when we, together with a client, come to that galvanizing story, and all those silos of work we do, content and demand gen and ABM and everything else, works so much better when that snaps into focus. And the missing piece was what you're referring to, the latest post, which is kind of, I think, the fourth in the series, the Galvanizing Story series, was about the emotional core. And we kind of realized, you know, that the story itself is very rational and it makes sense and you can make someone change their mind. But we all know that that's not how people decide things, right? They decide with their gut and their heart, and they use their head to justify that change, you know, that decision. And we all know this. I mean, behavioral economics, all the books, Thinking Fast and Slow, and all these great things out there have shown it over and over again. That's how people decide. But in B2B, we're ignoring that when we market, and we treat the buyers like, I call it like a buy bot, like a decision-making unit, you know, who's going to only use rational reasons for making a decision. And we're still marketing that way mostly in B2B, even though we know these are human beings and that they're going to decide on their gut. So it feels like
the B2C space kind of knows this already. I mean, I'm playing all these commercials in my head, right? I mean, what my favorite commercial is the Budweiser commercial with the Clydesdales, you know, and I cry every time, and I just think about the emotions that come from just ordinary commercials. You know, I feel like they kind of nailed it in that space. They get it, and as you're talking, I'm thinking about even our clients, Brian, and how, you know, we kind of look at them as a business, like they're a business, and we just need, you know, are they just looking for a good price, and are they just, you know, but that's really not the case, you know, and that's kind of what you're saying here.
Absolutely. And that's why you guys do what you do with media and this show and things like this, is you guys putting yourselves out there. And it's like, wow, you're going to attract people who are like, okay, I get these people and I like what I'm seeing and I can work with these people. And that's hugely important. I don't care how big a company, you know, people want to work with people they like and feel good about, and companies they feel good about. And it just feels like it isn't either or, you know. A lot of times we have this kind of discussion with the hard-nosed head of sales, and they're like, product, you know, enough with your namby-pamby stuff. It's like, actually, it isn't either or. We're not saying never talk about your product or never make those rational arguments. Of course you make them. But also in your mix should be this sense of who you are, why you do what you do, what turns you on and makes you excited, you know, your values, your beliefs. If you can nail that stuff, you're becoming a whole entity that someone can feel something about, not just think something about.
Right. And it's so much different because there's so, you know, you just look at any product line. There are so many products that are so similar. If they can't enjoy, or they are not excited about you and your presence and you're being part of it, you know, they can just choose anyone. It doesn't even matter, you know, for that case, you know. So it's.
And, you know, I think it's not like B2B marketers would disagree with what we're saying. A lot of people would say, yeah, but they don't act that way. Like the marketing really doesn't have it. And if you say, well, what about your brand? They'll take out their brand guidelines and look, it's got something about heart in it. And, you know, look, the third line of the brand house, message house thing built. And so there's plenty of kind of, yeah, we get it. But when you look at the best brands of any category, the ones that just leap out, you see it in action. It's like, that's how it works. It's like, here's someone they love what they do and they're not shy about sharing that with the world, you know? And what a nice, attractive, charming thing to do. And I'm still shocked how few do it, but I know it's harder, you know, it's not, it has to come from a real place, you know. Other things can be constructed and they'll be sufficient. Whereas that, you can't kind of fake it. You got to take it from somewhere real.
Yeah, it's funny. Nicolette alluded to a conversation we were having yesterday, and they were talking about, you know, go try to sell nothing, because they were talking about non-for-profits, right? And non-for-profits, they're not selling you anything, but they want you to give them money. So, you know, in essence, they are. And, you know, how hard it is, and that needs to really be conveyed with, like you're saying, heart and story and, you know, the emotional commitment to whatever the cause is, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm actually just newly on the board of a charity we've helped for years called Translators Without Borders, which is wonderful. They do great work, but it's kind of esoteric. It's like they translate, like they help humanitarian aid and development aid in that last mile where they're trying to help a population in the language of that population. So right now, generally, they'll go to help after a hurricane or something, and they're talking in the nearest colonial language, French or something. And it's like, hey, none of us speak that, you know? And so Translators Without Borders goes in there and does that last bit. And you can describe it the way I just did, which is kind of like how they do what they do. But it's the stories, you know, it's the mom who fed her baby poison instead of medicine because she couldn't read that label, you know.
Right.
All of a sudden, boom, it's like, wow, translation, it matters, you know. So
Yeah.
stories absolutely make such a difference.
You know, it's the beginning of the year, so everybody's looking at what's trending. So Doug, we wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit and see what you're seeing as some of the biggest trends among your clients and what you're seeing in the industry.
Okay, sure. So, I mean, one trend that just keeps accelerating is kind of we're moving out of what I call the Gutenberg era, the era when content was essentially rooted in the print tradition, you know. And even though we're doing PDFs and we're doing like websites, they're really print products, you know. And like, why are there so many words per page? Well, back then, paper and ink cost money, you know. And so we still have this idea of, well, look, it's like a brochure, but on screen. And a hell of a lot of content still that way, but more and more, and this is accelerating, is trend away from kind of a print ethos to a living screen ethos and content that not only is interactive and exciting and uses the screen for what it's good at, but also instead of it being an off-screen kind of interaction, like, hey, they downloaded my ebook. Did they read it? I don't know. Where did they stop? Where did they pause? Where did they drop off? With the new kind of content, it's a live session. So I can tell, like, did he scroll? Did she click? Did she finish? Did she drop off? Like, we do pieces that are live and you think, wow, at about slide 8, they're falling off. Why? Let's go look, let's fix it. So there's that benefit too. So that's a big one, moving away from kind of a printy kind of mindset. I think that's a big one. Another we're seeing a lot of is this kind of, there was this acceleration of the data science side of things. We talked about that kind of back and forth, but the roads between them, left brain and right brain, that's almost like that, like the infrastructure is happening to connect them so much better that a creative team will have access to the data that can shape ideas, and you try something and see how it did and resonated. So it's not kind of a silo of the analysts and the geeks sit over there. It's like, wow, we now have this in our team, the insights and data. And that feels like a big trend. Like, wow, the more that happens, the more it will happen because it's so self-rewarding, you know. And, you know, what we talked about earlier about a bit of a swing back from the toys of marketing. Toys isn't the right word, science and tech of marketing to the stories of marketing and the galvanizing stories and brand. And there definitely feels like a move back to that. There's, you know, one thing I would love to say is a trend that I don't think will be, but I wish it was, and that's a documentary mindset and more documentaries in particularly B2B marketing. Like you guys.
So, Doug?
Well, it's like you guys are doing now. It's like, instead of saying we know stuff and we're going to tell you stuff, it's let's find out. Let's go out into the world and find out something, and we'll bring our learning back to our audience. And we'll learn in public. And it's partly a mindset, partly of actual medium, the documentary. Let's go make a film where we interview people who are interesting and finding stories in the world. And there's some great examples of it out there. And it's just such a compelling, not just format and medium, but mindset of we're on this learning curve together with our customers and others in the industry, and we're going to share that learning.
Right. Do you think we'll see more of that, especially with more and more people being interested in even their own origin story or their company's origin story or telling their origin story like that? Because that documentary format almost seems to really go along with, you know, playing nicely into an origin story.
Yeah, definitely. And one can make a documentary about one's own origins and roots. And even maybe more interesting to me is like your values and your beliefs. Like if you're a procurement company and you think waste is kind of criminal, like waste is immoral in a world of scarcity, right? Well, let's go explore waste. You know, let's see what it means to waste, and just divorce it from your product for a while and just go out there and riff with other people on this concept of, and then start to bring that back to the story about procurement software or something, you know.
Right.
So there's that kind of exploration too. And I know they're tough to sell in because we've struggled, and you know, you're asking a client to go on a journey where you don't know the end. Like, we're not sure what we'll get. It's not scripted. we have some good feelings. We can do a test and a pilot. We can have a few shoots and we'll chat again, you know, a go, no go point that didn't cost too much. But it's harder to get people to buy into a journey of learning as opposed to, hey, let's nail down our message and let's shove it in people's faces.
We'll force feed it.
Well, you know, what's interesting about that is, like, you know, because, you know, every company has its own thing, right? And there's a story to every company. If you look at Ford or you look at any major company, there is a story. And, you know, people interact and are so connected to those brands. They're actually curious about how they formed. What is the origin? What is that documentary mindset? What does it mean now? You know, and it's interesting that more B2B companies don't gear towards those documentary style.
I know. There are some super interesting ones. I mean, there's the classic in the tech world. The origin story is the garage, right? Two guys in a garage. My daughter's leaving. See you, hon. She's in for the day working on some homework. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
The origin story of like two guys in a garage, and it turns out like there's 4 or 5 of these. HP was the original, but now there's an Amazon garage somewhere, an Apple garage somewhere, and you realize if you're going to start up a business, don't do it in the bathroom. Get into the garage. It's only going to succeed, but lots of cool origin stories. I think is a great place to start.
But no, I think there's also, I mean, when you're hired, as you grow though, as a business, now it becomes about making sure that you're hiring people who are also in keeping with your original message and passion. And I think sometimes companies can go awry because we're human, and different humans, different mindsets, different opinions. And so I don't know, that's a scary thing for me, keeping your origin, you know. And I know we're not quite there yet, Brian, but you know, that's a scary thing, you know, to think about as I look forward. You know, what about these people who are going to mess up our message, you know?
There is that, and maybe actually that's one of the obstacles to people going this route that we're talking about, because it's hard to say that we all feel this thing, you know. We can all agree that we make this thing and it does that thing,
right?
But it's harder to agree that we believe this and feel this way. And for me, it ought to be loose enough to feel comfortable. I mean, you don't want to, you know, nail everything down so tightly that there are people in the company who don't identify with that. So maybe that is one of the obstacles. Yeah.
So Doug, lastly, leave us with this. How can we all be better marketers? That's a heavy one, I know.
No,
Your opinion.
I'll answer that like from, as long as I'm in the we as well, because I certainly don't want it to feel like, hey, be better like me. It's like, how can I and us and the 3 of us and everybody.
All of us, how can we do it?
Yeah, so for me, one is a big one, which is ambition. I feel like our ambition, we lower it ourselves, you know. We kind of blame others and their obstacles and the brief and the this and the that. But actually it's happening in here where it's like, we're the ones not aiming high. Like, wait, start there. Start with, I want to do something great on this piece, let's say. Start there and see what happens if you really have that ambition. And I want to do more, not just, here's the brief, great, I can nail that, let's start, let's type. It's more like, no, what would we do if we really wanted to aim high? So starting from an ambitious place would be a big one. And that often will lead to doing fewer things better. Like, all right, take the budget from your next 5 or even 10 pieces, collapse it into one piece and say, we're going to do something awesome. We're going to do the best thing on this, and pour all the love into it that we could never pour into things when it was like one of a series of 9 and we had to get it all this week. And so that's kind of maybe a corollary of the ambition. And I guess the other one, which is something I always have to remind myself of, is, you know, I'm better when I spend time on stakeholder management, bringing people along with us, you know. And this sounds like I used to resent this part of the job. Like, my job is to have good ideas. And when people see them, they'll get out of their way and we'll rush to market with them. It took me an embarrassingly long time in my career to realize that stakeholder management thing is not an obstacle to my job. That is my job, you know, bringing people along with us. So if, you know, get together with your stakeholders, even before you bring them anything to look at, get aligned on things like goals and target audiences and priorities and what good looks like and what bad looks like. And if you don't see alignment, if they're 2 big, powerful stakeholders who disagree, surface that, sort it out before you even go anywhere, because everything good's going to die in that environment. So invest some time in stakeholder management. I'm telling me that, and you guys that, and everyone else. Like, and your best ideas have just a dramatically better chance of surviving. So those are the things I would say for me in the coming year, and I guess everyone else who's listening.
Thank you, Doug. All right, Brian, what am I forgetting?
I think you nailed it all, Nicola.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time. It's late where you are, right?
It's 5 o'clock, not too bad. UK,
all right, not too bad.
Are you East Coast too? So it's
Yes.
All right, not too bad.
So thank you for chatting with us this evening. And
Yes.
Brian.
And Doug, where can we find out more about Velocity?
Thank you. It's velocitypartners.com. Our blog is there. That's probably the best place to kind of get a dose of Velocity. Check it out. And you know, we have pieces of content in a resource center, which we're proud of. So come and have a look. And I think there's something there for everybody. It's a little bit quirky. We try not to be the 10 SEO tips type. We're more the, isn't this weird? Isn't this interesting kind of quirky marketing.
Yeah, we get that.
That's a perfect way to be. Well,
Yeah.
Doug, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it.
You guys, thank you very much. I'm honored to be a part of it. Thanks.